so excited to be able to talk with you guys tonight. Like they said, my name is Veronica, and I have been on a lot of different campuses, actually. I went to school at UNT, and it was there at UNT where I met my husband, Kazayet. I think I have a picture up there from our wedding day. And we've been married for 2 years, so that's super exciting. After graduating, I did the apprenticeship with Focus at Richland College. Where are my Thunderbirds? And I got to be there for the last 2 years and have just absolutely loved it. I have some pictures up here of the Richland staff and the girls who got to go to Sikkim this year, and my COFA from this last year, Devereaux, which I love so much. I don't know where Devereaux is. Okay, and now I'll be transitioning to UTA. So I recently moved to Arlington, and I'm so excited. God has been teaching me so much through my journey from college to the apprenticeship, and now I just get the sense that God's going to continue to teach me things as I go to UTA, and God's doing something real special there, so I'm excited to join you guys. A little bit about me. I have trouble asking for help. I don't know if anyone can relate, but I see some hands. I was struggling with specifically like fundraising and feeling a lot of anxiety about it my first 2 years, but I didn't really ask for much help. And a month or so ago, Sirach, who is my supervisor, the one who is on the guitar, he's like, Veronica, why have you never asked for help? Like, you've been struggling with this so much. Why did you never ask? And it got me to realize I'm not the first one to struggle, and I'm surrounded by people who are very experienced with this. So why didn't I ask for help? So I was reflecting, and I was thinking, there's a lot of reasons why I don't ask for help. Sometimes I just didn't even know I could. I don't know if anyone can relate to that, but also, I think I fear a negative response, like, how could you not know this already? Or, figure it out yourself, I have enough on my plate. I mean, knowing Sirach's character, that just doesn't align at all. So as I was thinking about that, I felt goofy saying those things out loud. But I think in general, it's just pretty humbling and can be hard to ask for help. And I think I can struggle with that in my relationship with God too. If I'm feeling discouraged or stuck or confused or just melancholy, it's often an afterthought for me to approach God in prayer. So sometimes it's like I don't ask because it doesn't cross my mind to pray to God. But sometimes I just find myself talking to everybody. Like everybody I know, I'm like, what do you think I should do about this? What snacks should I buy for fall camp? What should I do? And then after talking to everybody and their mom, I'm like, oh, I haven't talked to God about this. And so I just find myself between these two extremes. One where I just try to figure it out on my own. And two, just asking everybody and not actually arriving at any sort of conclusion. I think sometimes I also don't pray or ask God because I'm afraid of asking the wrong question. Like, what if it's not in God's will? Or what if my heart isn't in the right place? Or what if I am seen by God as ungrateful, that I'm not already grateful for the things that He has blessed me with? So there's a lot of reasons why I don't pray. But on the other hand, there have been seasons of my life where I feel like I'm praying all the time, where I'm praying daily, every worship service, every time I talk to God, I feel like I'm asking over and over. And it feels like nothing is happening, or even the opposite is happening. I found that the last few years with my family, there's someone specifically in my family who I really have a burden for them to know the Lord and to follow Jesus. And I've been praying like crazy. But it feels like the exact opposite is happening with the life choices the person is making. And I really do struggle with wondering why. Why is nothing happening? And I feel myself so discouraged when I have these apparent no's from God, when it feels like it's a no or not yet. And it's honestly caused me recently to examine my own assumptions about prayer. If I'm discouraged by no's, does that mean I'm the type of person that's only encouraged by yeses? And what does that say about me, if so? Am I just treating God like he's a vending machine? Or do I see him as a person that I can connect with, who has his own thoughts and his own perspective that could be different from mine? I think we can all relate to this in general, whether you struggle with asking or you talk to everybody before you come to a decision, or you've asked over and over and over again and still feel like nothing is happening. There's a lot of reasons why we struggle to approach God in prayer. So many of us in this room would say, yes, I believe in God. But the question is, do you believe in prayer? To answer that, I just want you to think about what's been on your mind this past week. Is there a looming decision that you're having to make? Is something going on in your work or in friendships? Have you find yourself talking to your friends about something? Have you talked to God about those things? I want tonight for us, the one point that I want to leave you guys with is prayer can be a pathway for building trust with God. Prayer can be a pathway for building trust with God. So the good news is, we don't have to wonder if God wants to hear from us. We don't have to wonder if he's going to feel burdened by us or annoyed by us asking. Over and over again, the invitation is very clear. God is just like, just ask. I want to hear from you. Just ask. And when we look at the Bible, we don't see a template for how to get a formulaic response from God. If you ask this, then God will say this. Or if you pray for like 20 minutes and get on your knees, then you'll get a response from him. Or we don't see some kind of formula like that. But instead, we just see like a rich diversity of different people who have very different relationships with God and very different prayer lives. And in the middle of all that, we just see a God who is fervently pursuing his people. So for instance, I think about Abraham. God was going to potentially destroy a city, and Abraham decides to haggle and bargain with God. He's like, okay, God, if there's this many righteous people, will you save the city? What about this many? What about this? And he just keeps going back and forth with God, but God engages with it. And God agrees to the bargain that Abraham set. And I also think about Moses. He was praying on behalf of the Israelites, just urging God, remember the promises you made to the people. Remember. And God changed his mind. Abraham had the boldness to ask, and God listened. And then I think about Joshua. He asked that the sun would stand still. Now that is a bold prayer, a very bold prayer. And God honored it. Just crazy. And then there's Elijah. He prayed for miracles, and he saw some of the impossible happen. He saw fire rain down from heaven. He saw a woman's son be raised from the dead, and he saw waters part. And all of these because he asked God, and God answered. But I think the funny thing is, sometimes we elevate these guys, like, wow, they were so bold. But then we overlook Mary. Mary was very bold to ask the angel, how could this be? She was seeking to understand whenever she found out that she was going to bear the Savior of the world and she was a virgin. And she had the boldness to ask an angel, "How will this be?" I think that's very bold. Or the disciples who were constantly pestering Jesus to explain his parables. Jesus, we're confused. Jesus, we're confused. And they're just asking Jesus over and over for clarification or to understand. And I think that's bold. It's bold to ask for help when we don't understand what's going on. So I just want to encourage you guys that whether your request feels as big as making the sun stand still, or as humble as, "I don't understand what's going on in the scripture," God wants to hear from you, and he invites you to talk to him. So Jesus affirms that this is God's heart in Matthew 7:7-8. Jesus says, "Ask. Ask. Come on, ask." He says, "Ask, and it will be given to you. Seek, and you will find. Knock, and the door will be open for you. For everyone who asks receives. The one who seeks finds, and the one who knocks, the door will be open." So Jesus is like, come ask, seek, knock. He's just inviting us in. It makes me think, like, some people have listed on their door, "No solicitors, please. No solicitors." They're saying, "Please don't bother us. We do not want to hear what you're selling. We don't want to hear it." And honestly, though, even those solicitors, they are asking for something. They're just asking not to be asked. I think we're all asking for something. But it's almost as if Jesus has a sign on his front door that says, "Please knock. Please come in and chat." But I can't promise that you're going to find what you're asking for. I can't promise I'm going to give you the answer you're seeking. I think a lot of times, like, when a salesman comes up to the door and knocks, what they're hoping for is a yes. They're trying to sell something and they want to hear a yes. They're trying to get you to sign a petition or something and they want to hear a yes. But if someone knocked on the door of someone who just wanted a genuine relationship with them, you think it might change what they're selling? How would it change their approach? I think it's huge that Jesus invites us to ask, and he invites us to seek, that he invites us to knock. And I think it can be a pathway for us to build trust with God, no matter where we're coming from. So in the same passage, Jesus goes on to say, "Which of you, if your son asks for bread, gives him a stone?" That'd be ridiculous, right? Or if he asks for a fish, you'd give him a snake. If you, even though you are evil, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your Father in heaven give good gifts to those who trust him? So Jesus is saying, trust God's character. Jesus is saying, if you're hungry and you tell God you're hungry, he's not going to be like, "Dinner time," and do this. We can tell him what our needs are. Sorry, my microphone keeps falling. We can tell him what our needs are and trust that he's going to provide for them. He's not going to give us a snake for dinner or rocks for dinner. He's a good father. It's the same thing if you went over your friend's house. It's because you trust your friend that you'd ask your friend for a drink of water, and the thought isn't going through your head, "What if they give me poison? What if they give me poison? What if they poison me?" You trust them enough to take care of your needs, and you can ask freely, "Can I have a drink of water? I'm thirsty." But do you trust God enough to ask? Perhaps you've asked for something in the past and you've received, but the answer is not what you wanted. Maybe you were hungry and you asked God for some bread, and it feels like he gave you broccoli, which to some of you in this room probably feels like a snake. You're like, "Broccoli, a snake, oh, I don't want to eat either." But do you trust that God is the good gift giver Or do you just push away the plate of broccoli because it wasn't what you asked for? Prayer is a pathway for building trust with God. Now, I want to acknowledge, some of you in this room might be thinking, Veronica, your metaphors are cute, but my prayers aren't as simple as broccoli versus bread. It's a matter of life and death. And how do I trust God when I asked for healing and then my loved one died? How do I trust I received a good gift when I've been asking for deliverance from sin, but I'm still addicted? Is it me? Was it my faith that was not enough? Or was it God? Is he not actually the good gift giver? If these are the questions you're wrestling with, I just want to say to you, I'm really proud of you for showing up tonight. It takes a lot to just show up to a worship service and be around people who are worshiping God with gladness when you feel like you're in the thick of asking hard questions. And I also want to thank you for not giving up on God. I was actually in your shoes about a year ago this time last year. I was here, I just finished up my first year of doing campus ministry, and I was really in the thick of asking, why is God not answering my prayers? And so I remember we were singing this song, it was a very hype song, and it was like, I got a feeling the darkness won't last very long, and everyone was like jumping, and I'm standing there like hunched over, like just crying, because I'm like, the darkness feels like it's lasted forever. And I was so scared because it felt like the darkness would last very long. It felt like I was there and that it would never end. Sorry about this mic. For me, that night wasn't just a one-off night. It wasn't just an emotional week or even an emotional month, but it was a whole season that I had of wrestling with God and just trying to make sense of that teaching of God being the good Father, and then what felt like a lack of answers in response from God. And so I was here at Summer Focus, and some weeks I just felt sad. Other weeks I would just show up and feel really numb. Sometimes I would show up and the lyrics actually made me kind of angry because I'm like, I feel like I've been taught this and told to believe this, but is it actually true? I just felt desperate and sad. And I was like, God, I am asking, I am seeking, I am knocking, but why does it feel like you're giving me a snake to eat instead of fish? Or a stone instead of bread? But I kept showing up and asking and seeking and knocking, and at some point I kind of had this realization along the way that God never left me. I think he, out of his kindness, opened my eyes to realize he was there all along. And he softened my heart to believe a truth that was hard for me. I think I'm at a point now where I can say with confidence, God is a good Father and he loves us. But it took some time to get to that point. But I just pray for those of you who are in the thick of those questions that you would just keep your heart and mind open to letting God show you who he is. I don't need you to do a full 180 tonight, but I'm just pleading with you. Just keep showing up. And the problem with the sermon is I can't answer all your questions for you. And as much as I'd like to snap my fingers and solve all your problems, only God can do that. And he's invited you to develop that trust just through talking to him. So will you take him up on that? Jesus says that God causes it to rain on the just and the unjust. So he's saying being human just comes with its ups and downs. And the gospel hope is that downs are invitations for rooting yourself in Christ. If you're you're someone who measures your relationship with God or your spiritual growth by only external measures, like manifestations of your prayers and answered prayer, then you're like a marvelous tree with a really skinny root. And all it's going to take is one wind to knock you over. But it's in the storm, and it's in the wind, and it's in the darkness that God is establishing you and inviting you to dig deep roots into Him. Deep roots into His unfailing love. Psalms 1:3 says, He's like a tree planted by streams of water, yielding fruit in season, whose leaves does not wither and who prospers in all that he does. Psalms is kicking off the book by saying, root yourself in God and trust in His timing and His season. But this takes tremendous faith. If I could describe how I felt last year, it was just lost. But Jesus would later describe faith using another tree image, like a mustard seed. Though it's the smallest of all seeds, it is the largest of the garden plants and becomes a tree so that birds can perch in its branches. Last year when I was going through my darkness, I had people in my life like Sirach and Sandra and Joey, my Richland staff team, and they were like these big trees that I was able to take shade in underneath when I found myself in the storm. And I wonder what your campus would look like if you became that tree, where when people are going through a storm, they could find shelter in your branches. This year at Richland, we had a 2-month stretch or so where it seemed like there's a lot of storms going on. And it happens. It just happens in ministry, and there's people are people. But within those storms, there is gossip. There is friend groups breaking and being torn apart. There's a lot of hurt and feelings of pain. And it left me wondering, are we trees with deep roots? Or are we little seedlings with little roots, tossed around by every conflict? What if we had learned to pray together? What if our first instinct during conflict wasn't to text our friends or choose sides, but what if it was to fall on our knees and ask God to use us for His glory and to use our circumstances for our good? I think maybe I've found myself, and maybe others during that season, just forgetting that we could ask God for help. I think maybe I landed on one of those extremes again, you know. Number 1, just not asking for help, avoiding it. Or number 2, just talking to everybody, trying to make sense of the situation and not going to God. Yeah, tonight I wanted to introduce you guys to someone who is more righteous and more close to God than anyone I know. And he prayed a very desperate prayer in a very dark hour. And knowing the man that he is, I honestly would have expected God to say yes to his every wish and grant this prayer. But actually, God didn't. So let me introduce you to him. I think there's a good chance that a lot of you in this room might actually know him already. His name's Jesus! So let's read it together in Matthew 26, 36 through 45. So just for context, Jesus is about to get killed in a very gruesome, painful way, being strung naked on a cross in front of a crowd of people where he is just going to die a very slow death. So I want you to imagine the heaviness, the fear, and the grief you would be feeling if you were on death row and you knew that your execution was coming. So Jesus was innocent, and he was not guilty of any crime. And he knew that humanity had sinned, and a cost had to be paid. So this is his conversation with God in that moment. Then Jesus went with his disciples to a place called Gethsemane, and he said to to them, "Sit here while I go and pray." He took Peter and the two sons of Zebedee along with him, and he began to be sorrowful and troubled. He said, "My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. Stay here and watch with me." Going a little further, he prayed with his face to the ground. "My Father, if it is possible, may this cup be taken from me. Yet, not as I will, but as you will." Then he returned to his disciples and found them sleeping. Can you believe that? "Couldn't you men keep watch with me for 1 hour?" He asked Peter. "Watch and pray so that you will not fall into temptation. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak." He went away for a second time and prayed, "My Father, if it is not possible for this cup to be taken away unless I drink it, may your will be done." When he came back, he again found them sleeping because their eyes were heavy. So he left and went away once more and prayed a third time, saying the same thing. Then he returned to his disciples, saying, "Are you still sleeping and resting? Look, the hour has come when the Son of Man is going to be delivered into the hands of sinners. Rise, let's go. Here comes my betrayer." I think this passage of scripture came to mind to me because so often I find myself sleeping in moments where I should be on my knees praying. I think a lot of us can relate to that. But Jesus here models for us that we can just ask. We don't have to wonder, like, okay, is it right for me to ask this? Or can I talk to God about this? Or Jesus shows you can just ask. He says, "God, will you take this cup away from me?" But I also see with this ask, there's trust. There's trust there where he's like, "But I trust you. If it's not your will, I will drink this cup." In the end, he had to drink the cup, and he had to be crucified. But Jesus trusted that if that was God's answer, there must be a good reason, knowing that God was inherently good. So Jesus struggled with God. He asked 3 times for God to not make him go through it. Jesus asked, he sought God, and he knocked. God may not stop the storms in your life, but he'll lead you through it. And what I'm inviting you to consider tonight is, will you draw near to him? Will you use prayer as a way to talk with God and build trust? The further we get along in the Christian walk, I think the more aware we are of the darkness around us. But in some ways, the less we're bothered by it. Not because we just snap our fingers and it's all okay, but because our trust in God just starts to grow deeper and deeper as we trust he really is good. And he has it in his hands. But you can't just skip the journey. It's a journey to get to that place where you trust God. So if you're hearing me say that and say, "That sounds so silly," I would invite you to just take one step in the journey. And I think eventually God will draw you to that place. But we can't become close to God without actually having conversations with him and talking. This is a hard message to really live out. It's hard when you've asked so much that your voice is hoarse, or you've sought so much that your eyes feel strained, or knocked so much that your knuckles are raw. But God invites us to come boldly. He invites us to just keep talking to him. And that's a tremendous amount of freedom. I want us to just imagine how vibrant and honest of a prayer life we would have if we talked to God as much as we did our boyfriend or our girlfriend or our best friend. If you had a good job interview, what if God was the first person you wanted to talk to? Or if you had a really, really tough day and that customer at work totally mistreated you? What if God was the first person you wanted to debrief that with? What if you, like Lindsay was talking about last week, embraced a silent car ride and just sat with God? Imagine what our ministry would look like if it was a room full of people who talked that often to God. Can't always guarantee that we'll get the answer we want from God. But the good news is the more you spend time with him, the more your trust will grow. Think about the people you trust most in your life. I'm sure that you have more trust for them now in a lot of cases than you did when you first got to know them. And in that case, humans are flawed and evil, but I think with God, our trust will just grow. For example, I want to talk about Lanaya. Some of you might know her. She was a Richland student the last 2 years, and yeah, Lanaya! So she's going to be transferring to Denton this next year. Yeah. So if any of you, like Denton people, come up to me and say, hey, I want to get to know Lanaya, how should I get to know her? Imagine if I responded, great question. Here's what you got to do. Take notes. I've actually developed a system to get to know Lanaya, and it's a 40-day system. This is how you do it. So first, you got to take her to Chick-fil-A, and you got to buy her an 8-piece nugget with a medium fry and Chick-fil-A sauce, but do not get her honey mustard. I repeat, do not get her honey mustard. Then you just got to casually bring up that you like Maverick City and some of these other music artists, just casually. Then on day 2, I want you to invite her to Seventh Day Coffee. But I think at this point, you'd kind of be scared, like, this is weird. This is really unnatural. You'd kind of probably start to have questions about me too. But we do the same thing with the God of the universe. All I know is I love Lanaya, and she's so awesome to be around. And you guys in Denton are in for a treat. You guys are going to love her too. She was really such a blessing in our Richland ministry, and I know that in Denton she'll be the same. But if you want to know her, just spend time with her. Just get to know her. Talk to her. See what she thinks. See what she likes. But don't get her honey mustard. I think it's hard to trust the most valuable things in our life to others. I imagine homeowners, if they leave for like a long-term vacation, like handing their keys off to someone, or parents with their child, handing their baby to a babysitter. I think that would be very hard. And prayer is kind of like leaving our most precious things, our dreams and our hopes and our fears and our desires into the hands of someone else. And I think if you were handing your keys or your baby to a stranger, you'd feel pretty nervous about that. But if it was someone you trusted and you had experienced their character firsthand, it's a lot easier to do it. It's not totally easy, but it's easier. So if God feels like a stranger to you right now, meaning maybe you haven't spent much time with him or talking to him, that's okay. There are plenty of strangers that after a brief interaction with them, you're like, oh my gosh, I feel like we've known each other for years. Like, it just feels so natural. And so imagine how much more you'd feel that with the creator of the universe, the creator of you who knit you together, who knows you so well. And I know it's kind of weird, but I kind of like meeting strangers, you know? I mean, call them what you want, new students on campus, strangers, whatever, but every fall, I meet a ton of strangers during Welcome Week. I talk to a lot of them, and some of them have become some of my closest friends, and I bet a lot of you have felt the same way. So if right now God feels like a stranger to you, I want to encourage you that maybe he'll become one of your best friends. We have the freedom to talk to the creator of the universe. We just gotta ask him, talk to him. So I want you guys to take out a piece of paper or take out a note on your phone. I'm going to have the worship team come back up. But I'm just gonna ask a series of questions. You guys don't have to answer every single question, but I just kind of want you to get at the heart of what I'm saying. And I want you to take a second to reflect on what's on your mind and give it to God during worship. So as they're setting up, kind of write down these things. And then as they're playing worship, you could just pray and ask God. But some of the questions I want to ask is, what has been pressing on your heart lately? What has been that thing that's been consuming your mind? What has caused an intense emotion in you lately? Maybe it brought you joy in the last week, or it made you furious. What brought you frustration or discouragement? What made you feel like giving up? What energized you? What is something God is calling you to do that you're fearful to step into? What are you avoiding? What are you wanting to embrace, but you're nervous to? What have you been hiding? What is that thing that you keep wanting to take to your grave, but it keeps coming up to your mind? What do you need to talk to God about? So like I said, just kind of the general gist, what's been consuming your mind. If any of those questions resonated, just write about that for a couple minutes, and then the worship team will come back up.